May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. My sister Mary used to live in the city, and for years, whenever I would go in to visit her, I had to keep up with her since she walked very, very quickly. And there would always be some point in our walks when I would start gawking at something or someone, some tall building or a celebrity, and she would say, "Stop looking like a tourist." And I would think to myself, but I am a tourist. So I can relate to the disciples being awestruck and saying to Jesus, "Wow, look, what large stones and what large buildings." Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down. And so begins Jesus' longest sermon in the Gospel of Mark, in which Jesus tells his disciples to keep watch. For heaven and earth will pass away, but about that day or hour, no one knows. So keep awake. Jesus is speaking here of the precariousness of the present, not the future. And Jesus' sermon here is sometimes referred to as the little apocalypse. And the word apocalypse comes from the Greek for uncovering or revealing, which lends itself to possibilities and a call to pay closer attention to the world around us, here and now. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, Jesus says. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs. This is but the beginning of new life, new possibilities. And any birth or new beginning involves lots of hard work. And any birth or new beginning requires trust and hope. When Mark wrote of Jesus' words some 30 years later, it did seem for Mark and his friends that the end was very near. Their news headlines contained famines, fighting, wars, violence. Jerusalem lay in ruins. The temple had been destroyed. The Emperor Nero seemed to be enjoying thinking up new ways for Christians to die. There was fighting among Christians themselves, with whole families being torn apart by conflicting loyalties. False messiahs were setting themselves up on every corner. It seemed that everything was falling apart. Barbara Brown Taylor imagines the early Christians thinking, surely God had intended a non-violent renovation of the world, a sort of huge urban renewal project with loyal believers in charge. Not this chaos, not this outrage, not this darkness. And so Mark reminded the people of what Jesus had predicted. Mark wrote it all down so that they would not forget. They could not have a new world without letting go of an old one. And so is life. When Jesus was crucified on Good Friday, his disciples believed the world had ended. When Jerusalem fell, they believed the world had ended. And in some ways, when any of us experiences a marriage or a close relationship falling apart, or an unwanted medical diagnosis, or the death of someone we dearly love, the world as we had known it can be breaking apart for us. But out of such death, always comes new life, beyond anything we could have ever imagined. And the birth pangs of that new life can be hard, might be more painful, and might last longer than we would have wanted. But God's promise is to be present with us through it all. Kathleen Norris contends that we often discover our true strength when some new revelation of the fault lines in our lives has occurred. She reflects, for some reason, we human beings seem to learn best how to live when our plans fall apart, when our myths of self-sufficiency and goodness and safety are shattered, and we are allowed a sobering and sometimes painful glimpse of what is possible in the new life that we build from the ashes of the old. Faith, hope, and love always stand together, St. Paul tells us. And the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies endure forever. Keep awake, Jesus says. Keep awake to how we live in the midst of our transitory world now. And it was just verses earlier in this Gospel of Mark where we heard one of the teachers of the law came and asked Jesus, of all the commandments, which is the most important? The most important one, Jesus answered, is this: the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is like unto it: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. Love is the way. Amen.
He is a rock,